All right, welcome back. Episode 196 of Chaotically Intolerant. Um, we will address the Super Bowl. We will address how wrong we got the Super Bowl. We couldn't be any more wrong. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about Kellen Moore getting the Eagles head coaching job. Um, but again, it's post Super Bowl. I think we're in that little hangover stage of no football, of it was a long season. So this is probably going to be a little bit of a shorter episode. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, at any point when you're listening. And let's go. All right, Mike. So let's address the big elephant in the room. We got it wrong. Every pick, every bet, the scores. We couldn't get it more wrong, in my opinion. And we were so very wrong. And honestly, I was sitting there kind of like halfway through the third quarter when I started to realize, man, they aren't coming back. There's no way they're coming back at this point. Or maybe end of the third quarter. And I was just there was a little bit of panic in my chest. Like, man, we got that so wrong. I can't imagine how wrong we got that. Not good.
Yeah, for me, it was bad because I'd gotten the last 10 Super Bowls right with the spread, 8 of the right money lines. So I really was like, wow. I think what got us more than it was doubting the Eagles. I think it was we just assumed that the Chiefs can do no wrong. We just assumed that this three-peat mission, that they were 15-1 in Mahomes starts this year, plus 2-0 in the postseason. It just didn't matter. They always would play up to their level of competition when they needed to. And then I started thinking, and a lot of the logic that I used to pick those Super Bowls were things that, of course, they look clearer in hindsight. But I was thinking, I'm like, is Mahomes really going to go 2-0 against both the 49ers and the Eagles? Are the Eagles going to be 1-4 in Super Bowls? This is a revenge game. Are the Chiefs that good that they can really finish this off with what's been a very average offensive line? So, yeah, again, in hindsight, it looks a lot clearer. I think the narrative got us all. I think the Chiefs, I think we just assumed that Mahomes could put the cape on at any given moment. And as you saw in this Super Bowl and as you saw in the Tampa Super Bowl 4 years ago, it just sometimes even he can't do it all. And he as much as he did and as much more as maybe he could have done, it wouldn't have been
enough. Philly did not send 5 once. Vic Fangio's front 4 were absolutely dominant. And this looked, again, we said this on the pre-show, it looked like 2020. It looked like that Bucs Super Bowl where Mahomes just had no help. He had nothing. And then after that Super Bowl, we were saying, oh, maybe it's over now. Like maybe that run is over. And then they went back out. They lost to Cincy and then rebounded and won 2 Super Bowls in a row.
Right.
Anyone who's saying, listen, there are Pats fans out there like dancing now saying, oh, it's Brady's the undisputed GOAT now. Like Mahomes has tarnished his legacy. We're really going to do that? Are we going to do this stupid thing where we act like his legacy is tarnished? He's 3-2 in Super Bowls. God forbid you're 3-2 in
Brady
Super
was
Bowls.
3-2 after his first 5 Super Bowls.
So. There you go. Bam. And I'm pretty sure Mahomes has been to 5 Super Bowls quicker than Brady, right?
Mahomes has won multiple postseason games 6 years in a row. Brady never had a stretch where he did that more than 3 years in a row, winning 2 or more postseason games. So there was always a year where maybe they won 1 game and then lost in the championship game or the divisional round, whatever. I don't think this hurts his legacy at all. It's unfortunate for him that it's, the 2 Super Bowl losses happen to be among a small group of his worst losses in his career. Yeah. But I think, got to give credit to Philadelphia. I think the assumption also, and another thing that I was looking at was like, well, a lot of times you see a team blow someone out in the championship game. And then you also say to yourself, you play that flawlessly one week. It's so hard to do that again. I mean, look at what Washington did to Detroit, played
Yeah.
basically a flawless game of football and then fell flat on their face against Philly. And Philly scored 95 points in the championship game and Super Bowl. That is unheard of. It's never been done
Yeah.
before. I just think we have to give credit to the Eagles and how good they really are. And you think about as dominant as they were, I mean, they could have lost to the Rams. Stafford gets the ball inside the red zone with a chance to win the game. I mean, even a great postseason doesn't come without, a close call or
It's
two.
if ands or buts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was. I think there was a little bit of a residual effect from that game against Buffalo. I think there was a lot of emotion in that game. It's continued like that. It was just another close game. And you know what? Sometimes like good teams just come out flat. Like we see teams do that all the time. I mean, Detroit was supposed to go to the Super Bowl this year. They their defense laid a dud against Washington against the number 6 seed. So I'm not really going to read into this for Kansas City too much. They're not the best team in football now. I will say that they're not the favorites going. I don't think they should be the favorites going into next season. But when it gets down to the moment, I'm still going to believe in Patrick Mahomes over all else because time and time again in the past, he's done it. He's showed us. He showed us in the AFC title game. He showed us in the divisional round against Houston. Against Tennessee. I can't remember. All those comebacks. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
He's had a few duds. It's going to happen. It happened to Brady. It happened to Manning plenty of times. It happened to Montana. I mean, it happened many, many times. So there isn't really much to say about the Super Bowl, honestly. I mean, I couldn't imagine if you told me that last week, I would have been sick. Like we come into this show, like, what are we going to talk about? What do we have to talk about? I mean, it's just every facet of the game for Kansas City seemed to fail, except for Xavier Worthy having like a good garbage time yards. So at least it made it look respectable. And then Philly was just the exact opposite. They did everything absolutely right. They came in, they knew what the narrative, they knew what was going on. They had all that hatred bottled up from 2 years ago, and Nick Sirianni, I'm sure, had all the hatred from us calling for him to be fired at the beginning of the year. Not just us, Eagles fans too. So don't blame us, blame the Eagles fans. Yeah, and I think they took all that and ran with it, and they looked like one of the most dominant defenses in the Super Bowl I think we've ever seen, honestly. Because I mean, you look at the score; it was 40-22. It was respectable, but I mean that could have been 40-0. Really, it could have been 40-0, reasonably. But
Well, yeah, and if I'm
yeah,
not mistaken, the Chiefs did not trail a Mahomes start this year by more than 10 points at any point in any game.
yeah,
Right? They were 15-1. They were down 10-0 to the Chargers in week 4. Even when they lost to Buffalo, their biggest deficit in that game, I believe, was 9 points, which is what
yeah.
they lost by. They were down 34-0 in the third quarter of this game. I mean, I it's hard to say. It's hard to put it all on the Chiefs. I think the Eagles really were
No,
that
the Eagles
good,
were very good.
were that ticked off. I think the worst thing for Kansas City, the worst thing. Well, two things stood out to me, and they both involved the run game. Kansas City had the tied for the third worst rush average this year, 3 yards a carry. We talked about it with John last week. Pacheco never found his groove after coming back from from injured reserve. Never found it. He was him and Kareem Hunt were complete non-factors. I get it. They fell behind, so it's harder to run. Hunt, 3 carries, 9 yards. P. Ryan had an 8-yard run. I think that was in garbage time. Pacheco, 3 carries for 7 yards. They could not and did not run the football in this game, and they really didn't do it this year. They had no set. I mean, just a shell of what their running game has been in the past few years. And if you had told anybody, us included, and you had told the Kansas City Chiefs that they were going to hold Saquon Barkley to 2.3 yards per carry, 25 for 57, I think we'd have been sitting here saying, not only do we think the Chiefs are going to win, they're going to win by 3
20,
touchdowns. And I think,
22.
yeah, and I think that part of it, even if we said, hey, Hurts is going to run, he had 11 for 72, so they didn't do a good
Yeah.
job containing him when he did run. Overall, Philadelphia ran it 45 times, which again, because they had the lead, they were able to do that. They still only averaged 3 yards a carry. That to me is the single most shocking facet. Not that Mahomes got pressured, not that the Chiefs couldn't run it. These were things we saw all year. Not even that the Chiefs offense just struggled as a whole. We've seen that all year, but that Kansas City did the one thing that everyone thought they needed to do defensively to win this game. And not only did it not help them win the game, it did not even prevent them from getting completely embarrassed. And so that really highlights, like you said, it could have been 40 to nothing. It feels like it could have been 40 to nothing. It feels like it could have been 60 to nothing. It just was that lopsided, and it had Seattle Denver vibes, really, where that game was over on the first play. This maybe was the second drive, it felt like. And there were people saying, well, but people are having flashbacks. Mahomes, he's come back from 10 down in all 3 Super Bowl wins, and he came back from 24 down against Houston. And I never felt like I felt like it was only going to get worse because of that pass rush. As the deficit grew, it was not going to be this Mahomes magic. You could just start to feel, at least I could early on, that it was just not going to be the Chiefs' night.
Yeah, I actually did take a bet. Someone at my Super Bowl party, it was right at the beginning of the second half, and they were like, "I'll give you 3-1 that they come back," and I was like, "Well, that's not great odds. I feel like I should probably get in at least 5-1, maybe even 10-1. But I'll take the bet. Maybe I can win $15." And that I just threw $5 down the toilet. But that's where it gets me in that circular thinking where it looked so bad and it looked so hopeless that you're almost like, okay, it's Patrick Mahomes. Like, this is what he's doing. It's gonna look so bad and so hopeless, and then he's gonna turn it on and do the Patrick Mahomes thing. We just never saw that. We just didn't get to see it. I do see like people compare it to 28-3. If you watch that Super Bowl, like if you go through and watch it, there were like I think there were signs that maybe like that Pats team had life in them, especially in that third quarter. There was no sign of life. Whatsoever.
Right. Edelman dropped a pass. The Pats were kind of hurting themselves as much as the Falcons were. I mean, the Falcons were playing great, but you're right. And in that game, the Patriots had to convert a 4th down in their own territory when it was 28-3. If they don't get that 4th and 3, then that game probably does end up like this one. But, they made that one play that kind of got them going. And can we also put to bed the narrative about the Chiefs getting all the calls? Because, yes, they got the early one, the PI.
I got so nervous. I was like, that's not good for the narrative. I said that to my Chiefs fan.
And then the Dallas Goedert play, which I think was just as egregious. And then Mahomes gets whacked in the face. Now, that was, late in the game. But I never got a sense that there was, it was rigged for one side. I think all that got put to bed. And I thought if you told me that the Eagles were going to have 6 sacks in this game, that 100% it would be Jalen Carter getting one. He was a non-factor. 2 QB hits, but he had no tackles, no sacks. It was Josh Sweat, 2.5. Milton Williams, 2 sacks. So it was just coming from everywhere. It was everybody contributing for the Eagles. It was Cooper DeJean, obviously, with the pick 6. Somebody I was watching with joked that Cooper DeJean was actually the little kid that Bradley Cooper was holding before the game. You saw that during the the anthem or whatever. He was holding.
I saw him giving out cheesesteaks too in Philly. Bradley Cooper out of his truck. Pretty cool. That was pretty cool. But I do want to say it's clearly rigged. They rigged it for the Eagles this time because Nevada Sportsbooks won $22.1 million on the Super Bowl this year. And clearly, here's what the NFL was doing. They had the Chiefs win the past 2 Super Bowls and then go 15-2 just to lose in the Super Bowl to the Eagles so that the sports books could make more money. That's where we're at right now. That's what's going. That's,
Yeah,
that's what's
and
going.
a lot of people were betting the Eagles in the first Super Bowl, and I thought I outsmarted them by taking the Chiefs, and I sort of fell into the trap this time around. And maybe the NFL just needs to give the fans more hope, because I think it would have been a really hopeless feeling if the Chiefs won 3 straight Super Bowls. Maybe we were picking them as much in anger as anything else, and the assumption was it would just go their way. But you're right. I think that Buffalo game, I think it was, honestly, it stinks as a Ravens fan, and I'm sure it stinks as a Bills fan to think that
Yeah,
either of those teams put up a better fight. I don't think either of them win. Honestly, I think the Eagles were the best team, but I think it's a game. It's certainly with the
yeah,
Bills. You think about the just them having that opportunity to finally get there. I can't see them falling flat on their face the way that the Chiefs did, and I can't see the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens, they hung with the Eagles when they played them, so I think that's almost more of a shame than anything else. Is not, yeah, people are happy to see the Chiefs lose, but I think it would have been even happier if the Chiefs never made it in the first place and we got a better football game and we had somebody to root for, because personally, I had no one to root for in this game.
yeah. Me neither. I was rooting for Kendrick Lamar. That's who I was rooting for in this Super Bowl. I felt like someone who hasn't watched a game all year and showed up to the Super Bowl and was like, "Yay, go sports!" Like that's what I felt like. I felt like that loser. I just didn't want anyone to win. I hope that the lights went out, like that New Orleans. I hope the lights went out again, and they just couldn't play the Super Bowl anymore, and no one won.
Yeah.
But Eagles fans, enjoy it. You are Super Bowl champions again. It seemed. Why are the Eagles considered the underdogs in this story? Like they haven't won a Super Bowl in a long time. That's what they're acting like.
Yeah, right. I didn't understand that. No, I mean, there was no underdog in this game. I mean, there was no underdog when the Patriots played the Seahawks. It's like it was no underdog last year. I mean, the
Yeah,
Chiefs were the underdog by the spread, but it was, they were there for the second year in a row, and the Niners were there for the second time in 5 years. And
yeah,
um, the thing was, if you look back at the AFC now, what did we say? It's been 6 quarterbacks have started the Super Bowl for the AFC in 22 seasons. But during most of that time, the NFC would rotate every year, and it was always like, okay, well, it's going to be Brady or Mahomes or maybe Manning or
yeah.
Roethlisberger in the AFC. It's always going to be one of those, but we'll have someone new out of the NFC. We'll have a Rex Grossman, a Jake Delhomme, we'll have Eli Manning, we'll have Nick Foles, right? It was always, and now we're in a cycle where the AFC hasn't changed, but now we're starting to see, we've now seen the Eagles 3 times in the last 8 years. We've seen the Niners a couple of times. So we saw Brady represent the NFC. So it's kind of like, oh boy, well, the onus now is on these AFC teams to put a stop to this, right? Because at some point, the NFC may just have a run where maybe the Eagles go to 2 out of the next 3 or 4 Super Bowls, right? I mean, the Ravens, the Bills, the Bengals, even a Miami, a Denver, the Chargers, the Texans, some team has to step up in the AFC and say, you know what? They watch the Super Bowl and say, yeah, we could have done that. We could have lost 40 we could have only lost
Yeah.
by 18 to the Eagles in the
The
Super Bowl.
Ravens
What?
could have.
Yeah.
The
Ravens
Bills
only
could
lost
have.
5 in the regular season to them. So why not? And I think that's, to me, that when I think about the Super Bowl, the real travesty, not just that we saw a terrible game, is that, all these other teams that just couldn't get it done against the Chiefs. And I still don't know why, because clearly the Chiefs can be had, and they can be had. They really had, the way that they were. It wasn't like if the Chiefs had lost on a last second field goal, we'd say, finally, the magic's over. And it took everything the Eagles had, but it was like, no, it was the Eagles just showed up and it was over.
Yeah, yeah. What else? I got some, I guess, some extra news. Let's stay. We can stay on the Eagles a little bit. Kellen Moore staying in New Orleans. Just don't even go back to Philly, I guess. Um, that's just such a meh hire to me. That is just such a meh hire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean the team is just meh. I feel like you're set up for failure. Whoever's going there, it's not going to work. You're just set up for failure. You're going into a horrible cap situation. The ownership is just god awful, both morally and owner ownership wise, like football wise. They're just god awful. So yeah, any thoughts on Kellen Moore going there? Clearly, it didn't affect his game plan. Everyone complaining about Ben Johnson. taking interviews, during the playoffs. Clearly, this didn't affect his game plan because he was taking interviews during the playoffs and during Super Bowl, the 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think if you're Kellen Moore, if you're any first time coach, I think it's you just take the job and say, hey, I'm going to take on the challenge. I think
Yeah.
it'd be a little more surprising to maybe see an established coach go into that situation in New Orleans. I mean, unsettled quarterback situation, bad cap. Of course, Pete Carroll's going to the Raiders, so who knows, right?
Yeah,
His old age is going to go
that's true.
to a notoriously bad franchise. But yeah, I mean, look, Kellen Moore wasn't the hot candidate that Ben Johnson was, and yet he puts up the great offensive game plan of the championship game and Super Bowl, and maybe he's got some voodoo magic in New Orleans. Maybe he can bring that. I don't know. I don't think you're right. It's not a sexy hire by any means, but it's become such a thing now. Remember you were talking to one of the shows earlier that's like it was kind of cool this year that Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton, they kind of went back to the past with some of these
Yeah.
older coaches. It doesn't always have to be the flashy young hire, but that is the prevalent thing in the NFL these days. And sometimes it works with Sean McVay, sometimes it doesn't with Gerard Mayo. So who really knows? But you're right. They're going to be very low expectations for Kellen Moore. I'll just say that in New
Yeah.
Orleans.
I think this was also kind of seen. It really like flew under the radar when it was announced. I mean, Moore has been he's been a head coaching candidate for a while, right? Like the past three, ever since he was with Dallas, he was a head coaching candidate. Everyone was talking him up as the next big guy, and then they struggled, and then he did, and then I think he did he go to the Chargers
Yeah, I think so.
after Dallas, and then it was just kind of there, did he go to Philly after the Chargers? Am I right about that?
Yeah, I think that's right.
So he's been in the cycle for a while. He's not the sexy young thing anymore. He's not the sexy new guy coming into the office, I guess. But listen, I hope the guy succeeds. I guess. Yeah. Let's stay in the NFC East here. Dak lauds the Eagles. He congratulates them, but the Cowboys are close. Michael, it's the Cowboys' turn to win the Super Bowl this year.
Well, the NFC East is now it's two teams that Dallas has to look out for, right? I mean, Washington's going to go in with pretty big
And the
expectations,
Giants, of course.
and the Giants will be the other. Yeah, uh, I don't know where. I mean, Dallas. It's just you'd almost rather be in the position that the Giants are in, right? And instead of this rut of mediocrity that the
Yeah.
Cowboys are in, where Jerry Jones will never commit to tearing it down. He refuses. The Cowboys are the Toronto Blue Jays, the Minnesota Twins, the Tampa Bay Rays, the Oakland and Sacramento Rays. It's like the Brewers. It just you can't. You're in this sort of like middle, but you can't get past this ceiling, and you can't fall below this floor because you refuse to go to the lower end so that you can get around the barrier on the top. And it's
Yeah.
just I don't know what there's. I think what they're showing Howie Roseman quite a bit, right? And Brett Veach gets a lot of attention, understandably so. The way that these teams are built, and I think what Howie Roseman did is even more impressive because I think Jalen Hurts is a very good quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, but he's not Patrick Mahomes. So Roseman's genius is, they built through the defense, through the offensive line. I mean, they have a massive offensive line, massive,
Yeah,
right?
it's
That
fucking
helps
nuts.
Saquon Barkley do well. They've drafted well. They've signed the right free agents. So much of it, and you don't hear about Jeffrey Lurie a lot in terms of like when you think about owners, right? Jerry Jones gets a lot of attention, Robert Kraft, and even the Hunt
Jim
family,
Irsay.
Jim Irsay for all the wrong reasons, right? Or if Mark Cuban was an NFL owner, you'd hear about him. But the celebrity, you hear about the Shad Khan and the mustache and all that, but you just don't hear a lot about Jeffrey Lurie. And yet the Eagles have been, I would say they have been, if you had to name a premier franchise of the 21st century in the NFC, you could argue maybe the Niners, but I think it's the Eagles. I
I
really
mean, they've
do.
been to 3 Super Bowls.
They've been to 4 Super Bowls
Oh,
this
sorry.
century. Yeah.
Four. Yeah, shit. Four.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
And then
they've
Reed
been.
got him to 5 NFC championship games in his
Yeah.
tenure there, which was, I think, 14 seasons total. They rebuilt. They went to the playoffs with Chip Kelly. They had 2 double-digit win seasons with a guy that was, by all accounts, a terrible coach. They won a Super Bowl with Doug Peterson. They've now won. Nick Sirianni has now been the winningest coach in his first few years, or at least the winningest coach in the NFL in that span, whatever the stat is. So, if you're the Cowboys, if you're the Giants, if you're one of these teams that just can't seem to get it right, maybe you got to think about how these other teams have gotten good. And I believe the Cowboys will never be truly
Let's
great with Jerry Jones there. That just won't
let's
change.
yeah, let's take a minute, I guess. Let's talk about what are the premier teams of the 21st century in the NFC. I mean, Philly is right there. I
Well, I
think you
think
can
Green
definitely name
Bay
Philly.
is certainly in the
Green
discussion
Bay.
in
Yep.
terms of being consistently competitive, and obviously San Francisco has been to 3 Super Bowls. They've gone through a few stretches of some bad years, but they've also had obviously 3 straight NFC Championship appearances with Harbaugh, and then they went in 2019, 21, 22, and 23. So even they've gone 4 out of the last 6 years to that stage, and they've won 2 of those NFC Championship
Yeah.
games. I mean, Seattle had a good. Obviously, Seattle won a Super Bowl.
Seattle's been to 3 this century.
They
The
were good
Rams.
with Holmgren and Hasselbeck. Yeah, well, the Rams, that this from 04 to 17, they didn't make the playoffs. Between St. Louis and LA,
That's
so they
true.
had a pretty big gap in there. And I think it's easy to identify the teams that aren't good in the NFC or haven't been good: Dallas, Chicago, Arizona, until the last couple of years, Detroit.
Yeah.
The Giants, look, the Giants won 2 Super Bowls, but the rest of the century has been pretty underwhelming for Big Blue.
Yeah.
And like the South, like Carolina's made a couple, Atlanta made a Super Bowl, the Saints won one. The Bucks have won 2, but again, they also had a 13-year stretch where they didn't make the playoffs.
That's like said that's so under the radar to me too, that they've won 2 Super Bowls in 20 years. It feels under the radar because it wasn't sexy when they did it over the Raiders, and then obviously Brady. Like I think that Brady overshadows
Right.
the Bucks organization. Like when you think about that Super Bowl, you think, oh yeah, Tom Brady won that Super Bowl. You don't even think about the logo on his helmet. When you think about him raising the trophy, which is there any other team or Super Bowl winning team that you would think of like that? That seems like the only one to me that you would really think of like that. Like even Chiefs, you think of, or Mahomes, you still think of the Chiefs.
Sure.
But yeah, that's the only one I can think that's overshadowed.
Well, right. I mean, I think you could say, well, Kurt Warner took the Cardinals to the Super Bowl. And, Drew Brees, but everyone remembers Brees as a Saint, even though he was his first 5 years he spent in San Diego. And I agree with you. Yeah, it's strange. It's strange. I mean, the Bucks have 2 Super Bowl wins that were blowouts over AFC West teams, but speaking of Mahomes, Jalen Hurts is only the second active quarterback to win a postseason game against Mahomes, with Burrow obviously being the other. Because Mahomes is now 17-4 in his postseason career, which is still incredible when you think about
That's
it. And
fucking nuts.
He's 0-2 against Tom Brady led teams. So he's 17-2 against everybody not led by the I guess undisputed GOAT to this point, or one of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would say the Eagles are the premier NFC team, and I would say I would still have to say the Patriots just because they did it for longer. But right now the Chiefs have obviously have taken that moniker. But look, they've only done it now. This is really year 7 for Mahomes, and New England did it for almost 20 years. So it's still not quite fair to make that comparison yet. But we'll see.
But the reputation is not tarnished. I'm just not going to.
No,
we're not going to do that.
No,
one game or 2 games. Let's say 2 games. 2 games doesn't tarnish your reputation, even as the GOAT.
No, it doesn't. And when you think about if you lose a game, you lose a game. Do you lose it because a guy catches a ball on his helmet, or you lose it by 40 points? You lost the Super Bowl. You have one Super Bowl loss, in those 60 minutes, And so, yes, it's ugly. People will say, well, yeah, Mahomes, he picked a couple bad games to have his worst game, the Super Bowl being his two of his biggest blowouts. But again, I think it just also serves to highlight that football is still a team sport. I mean, it is a team sport. The quarterbacks get all the glory. We look at their numbers and their wins and losses in these games, but Barry Sanders never sniffed a Super Bowl. He went to one NFC Championship game in his career. Barry Sanders, one of the greatest running backs to ever play the game, but he couldn't make the Lions a Super Bowl team by himself, and so that's the thing. I mean, that's another thing that bugs me about this whole legacy thing about Mahomes. I mean, the Chiefs got trampled. Mahomes was just part of it, and he
Well,
played.
he was physically trampled. He was physically trampled.
He was, yeah. But look, and he didn't play great by any means. We're not sitting here saying like Mahomes, threw for when Brady lost to the Eagles, he threw for over 500 yards in that game. But people also remember that he got stripped at the end by Brandon Graham, who, by the way, came back, and maybe he goes out on top with this. I don't know. He's getting up there in years.
Yeah, Philly's they're expecting 1 million people to attend the Super Bowl parade, which I would assume is coming up Wednesday or Thursday.
Friday, yeah.
Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah, after what happened last year, I know Kansas City said they weren't doing like an all everyone can come Super Bowl parade, which that just sucks that someone had to do that and ruin it for everyone else. Because if you talk to like any Boston sports fan, some of their greatest memories are the parades. Like 2004 when the Duck Boats came out and the Red Sox finally did it. And Manny is holding the sign saying Jeter's playing golf right now. I mean, there's people literally in the river. Like there's the picture of the guy on the pole that's sticking like 5 feet out of the river. Like that's a memory that people will cherish forever. And now because some moron had a gun because he's an asshole, it's gonna ruin it for thousands of people. So. Whoever did that, fuck you. I'm gonna say it. Fuck you.
Well, I mean, look, the Toronto Raptors. Toronto's a generally pretty safe city, by relative to maybe other big cities. And you had a shooting at the parade there in 2019. Obviously,
they did. I didn't know that.
They did, and you had shooting last year with Kansas City, and we know that Philadelphia can be. We had
they tore down the city.
Yeah. Well, we had a fan fall off a light post, a college kid.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago when they beat the Commanders. So, my joke was that, maybe people didn't want to see the Chiefs win, the three-peat and all that. And I said, but you know what? It might be a matter of public safety for the Chiefs to win. Either way, I think it was going to be bad in Philly. They lose, they riot, they win, they tear the city down. So, and by the way, a friend sent me, there's a famous Bill Burr roast of Philadelphia where he did a set. And of course, Bill Burr, big Boston guy, very knowledgeable, extremely knowledgeable sports fan. And he was at a show in Philly. This was, I think, in 2006. And he was the last comic of the night. And all the other, it was, some headliners. It was Patrice O'Neal. Dom Herrera had been on right before him. And they were booing the heck out of all these guys. And Bill Burr just came out, he had hair then, so I could say hair on fire.
Guns a-blazing.
He just spent his entire set just annihilating the entire crowd, the entire city of Philadelphia. Went off on the sports teams. It was pretty legendary. I think the sports stuff is what made me laugh more than the other stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it was a good time to watch that because there's probably a lot of people who are feeling the same way right about now.
Yeah. Go check that out. Anyone saying they boycotted the Super Bowl because it's rigged, whatever, all that shit. Record viewership, 127.7 million US viewers. So either you guys, I don't know, you didn't boycott or your boycott just failed. It just failed. Sorry to Taylor Swift as well. We don't get the Travis, we don't get the Kelsey Swift joint Super Bowl ring. Man, I would have loved to own that one. And we don't get Travis proposing on the field. She did get booed, and she did not like it, which was That was kind of funny. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it, was looking at a lot of these offshore props, and they were all about the Taylor Swift and the proposal. And I think that's what in the past I've been able to avoid falling into that trap. And I think they knew fans were hooked on the narrative, and
Yeah.
that's and it goes back to your thing about Vegas. But yeah, it's the first time I can remember. I mean, obviously, it's the first playoff game they've lost since Swift started dating Kelsey. But I feel like even some of the Chiefs' rare losses, she wasn't there. Like, I feel like every single time she's been at a Chiefs game that they've won, I can't even remember, because they lost 6 games last year. They did. They actually lost 6 games in 2023.
Yeah.
And I'm
Believe it or
thinking, like,
not.
what?
Believe it or not.
Believe it or not, I mean, like, maybe she was there Christmas Day when they lost to the Raiders, but like, I don't think she was in Green Bay when they lost the Sunday night game, or they lost to the Lions. That was before they were officially had started dating. So yeah, it was kind of weird to me. I just wanted to see her reaction when it was, like 34-0, but they never showed it.
I wonder if she slapped Travis. Did one of those like dramatic movie slaps.
Yeah.
I can't believe you lost.
Yeah.
Debo Samuel. Debo Samuel has requested a trade. The Baltimore Ravens are among some of the teams that are likely to trade for him. What are you thinking, Mike? I'm seeing some people say that Debo is an average receiver, and he just had one or two good years.
I will touch on that in a sec. I'm just curious who you thought Jason Kelsey was rooting for, by the way. Was it the Eagles or the Chiefs? Never just chew on that for a second.
I did listen. I listened to Andrew Luck's interview on Pardon My Take. Very good interview. Very funny. They did a really good job with it. You get them talking about concrete and column caps as well. Pretty cool. That's actually in my line of work, column caps and stuff. So I was listening like, oh, I know what they're talking about here. But he talks about, he says he has a soft spot for the Colts, but he does, he roots, he kind of like, he watches his guys and he roots for his guys, but he'll root for the team that he kind of cares about. So I guess he's a Colts fan. So in the same way, in the same vein, I would say Kelsey was rooting for Philly to win, but Travis to have a good game, which I think he might have said that, honestly. I might just be pulling a direct Travis quote. So I'd say he's happy Philly won, but he's upset that Travis was basically a non-factor in this game.
Yeah, he did say he was rooting for the Eagles. So okay, I was just curious. I didn't even know that was a thing that you could Google it. But back to Debo Samuel, one of the teams. I think that the ESPN pointed out every team in the AFC North could use Debo Samuel, but the team that I think, and Samuel commented himself, was that Denver could be a really good situation. And Sean Payton really knows how to make offensive magic. He could really put his skills to use. I think Denver needs a playmaking receiver, with some experience. But I think I'd be lying if I said, as a Ravens fan, I wouldn't love to see him. I think the Ravens need some. They could use any kind of talent at receiver. I think Cooper Kupp would be a good fit. I'd love to see just a veteran receiver who can go vertical, who runs great routes, who can just be kind of like and I shouldn't be mentioning Mark Andrews, but Mark Andrews, in fairness, has been Lamar's security.
He's a
great player who had a bad game.
Great player.
And I think they need the wide receiver version of that. But if you told me, hey, the Ravens are going to get Samuel, I think that would be great. What is it with the Niners and receivers requesting trades? I mean, last year it was Ayuk, and then he gets the extension. I don't know if Debo's situation is contract.
Debo did it at the beginning of the year. He did the exact same thing. This is not new.
Right. Disgruntled wide receiver. I mean, wide receiver and diva is it's like redundant, right? And the 49ers, of course, had Terrell Owens for a long time. It's just, what is it with, the Niners and disgruntled wide receivers in particular? But I don't know. I mean, the Niners are in kind of a weird spot. I think we expect them to bounce back next year, because this is what they did after they lost the first Chiefs Super Bowl. They came back. They were a dropped interception away from possibly being back in the Super Bowl again. And then, they have Brock Purdy's final final year of his rookie deal coming up, right?
Yep.
And they hopefully they have Christian McCaffrey healthy, and it's kind of an interesting decision for the Niners. I wouldn't be shocked if they traded him, because I feel like you're coming up to this point where you may start to lose, that window starts to close maybe a little bit, and you want to start to say we need to have some assets available in terms of the
Yep.
draft. And you know what?
I
They
agree.
still have enough weapons for Brock Purdy, and they can use Kittle and McCaffrey. So in fact, I really think the Niners should trade him, especially if he doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, I think this is a great. Yeah, this is a great time for them to kind of jump ship a little bit ahead of time and maybe get a head start on a full on rebuild. I mean, it are you going to roll with Brock Purdy for the foreseeable future? Is that really a sustainable quarterback to roll with? I don't know. I mean, it's up to John Lynch. He's a very capable general manager, and yeah, I mean, are you going to roll with how long is Brandon Ayuk going to last? How long is Christian McCaffrey's body going to last him?
Yeah.
Is that's a grand question you can ask. So I mean, those are your core tenants on offense, and all of them are. I mean, it's a questionable future at the best, I think, for the majority of them. I mean, George Kittle, he's got to be getting up there. Tight ends don't exactly last long; they don't age well in the NFL. So yeah, this is an important offseason for the San Francisco 49ers. This is really important. I wouldn't be shocked if we see some more selling from them, honestly. I mean, we're probably not going to see a quarterback, a new quarterback in San Francisco this year, but maybe next year.
Well, and you're talking about the NFC West and quarterbacks. I mean, Matthew Stafford may not be back with the Rams. I mean, I don't know if it's a trade situation or he's a free agent coming up, or yeah. Well, he has a huge cap number. That's what it is. He's got almost a $50 million cap number, and he's 36. He'll be going into his 17th season. So they could save $27 million if they trade him after June 1st, or $23 million if they just cut him. And I mean, to me, Stafford's got a lot. Let me say, he's still a very good quarterback. I don't know if he has a lot of football, but Pittsburgh,
he is enough.
He's better than what Pittsburgh has. Better than what a lot of teams have.
Yeah.
But then what do the Rams do? Do they roll with Jimmy Garoppolo, or do they go out
Jimmy G?
They're in an interesting situation. So you got two NFC West teams that are generally pretty good, facing really big, off seasons, I think.
What about Russ over to LA?
Yeah, well,
Justin Fields over to LA.
Yeah, there's. I mean, I don't want to hear any Kirk Cousins thing.
Kirk Cousins over to LA.
I mean,
Kirk Cousins in San Francisco.
Hang on to Derek Carr. I mean, there'll probably be
Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers back to the state. How about California going back? So yeah, I mean, the NFC West will be interesting because it was very tightly bunched this year, right? Arizona won 8 games, and they finished ahead of the 49ers. And there's still questions about Kyler Murray and where the Cardinals are going to go. And then you had Seattle won 10 games and kind of very quietly won 10 games with Geno Smith.
Yeah.
So who knows if both of the Rams and the Niners have kind of less than stellar off seasons, maybe Seattle becomes the favorite in that division.
And then staying with the Rams, Cooper Kupp, does he make the Bills the AFC's favorite? I think he does.
I think I think that
I think you need a veteran in there.
I think a Myles Garrett would make the Bills or the Ravens the AFC favorite too. Yeah, I mean Buffalo does need they need a true number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah. And then I wanted to do a little to end the show because they did release the Super Bowl logo for next year. And they're really trying to hide the color prediction thing that we're doing because they gave us like 8 different colors and they're all mixing together. It's in San Francisco and it's on NBC. So I got to ask you, who's your favorite network that to broadcast the Super Bowl? Because mine's NBC. NBC, I always associate with the biggest games. Sunday Night Football in my lifetime as a football fan, my like growing up, I guess, Sunday Night Football was the game. It was not Monday Night Football. I know Monday Night Football was for a long time, but it's always been Sunday Night Football, especially Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth. Hearing those guys, that was a big game. That was jitters, that was nerves, that was okay, like these are two great teams that are going to face off. Um, CBS and Fox just don't do it for me, and the Fox score bug was horrible this year.
Oh,
I don't want to hear anyone say it was simple. No, that was lazy. It was lazy. It was so lazy to me. You could have done anything else. Even add like a little bit of a background behind it. I think that would have been better. But yeah, who's your favorite to broadcast the Super Bowl?
Before I say that, don't get me started ever on Super Bowl logos because this has been horrible. This was the
Yes,
15th
yes, it
year
has.
of this standardized phallic looking logo. By the way, if you look at the logo, so next year it's LX for Roman numerals, but the trophy in the middle makes it look like LIX. And it was the same
Yeah.
thing for Super Bowl 55, which was LV, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing in the middle, so it looked like LIV, which had been the year before. It's so absurd. The Colts and the Saints, that was the last unique Super Bowl logo.
That was
It
a good
was
one.
great. There have been some really fantastic ones. It was always synonymous with the city. It was always it was a great marketing opportunity. I don't know. I mean, this is just a Goodell failure. I'll give him a tiny bit of credit for infusing a little bit of color at least into it, but it's a standardized logo and it's terrible. But in terms of broadcasting, yeah, for me, I mean, I grew up watching ABC because that was Monday night, and ESPN with Mike Patrick, Joe Theismann, and Paul McGuire called the Sunday night games on ESPN, and Al Michaels, and then John Madden came in 2002. I would say NBC, it would be my choice. I really enjoy Mike Tirico. I mean, I don't like Collinsworth's actual voice, but I think he's a good broadcaster. I think it does have that.
Yeah.
But I also like Jim Nantz. I think CBS delivers a much better telecast top to bottom than Fox. You're right. The score bug, they always unveil it for a Super Bowl. At least that's how it's been in recent years. They'll have a new one that they unfurled for 2022 when it was Eagles Chiefs, and they did it for the Niners and the Chiefs. That was also on Fox. Yep. So that was bad. That was also a flop. I think Tom Brady did all right. I'm tired of looking at how plastic his face looks now.
He's getting a little freaky. I think photos of him in like a candid photo of him, like on his social media or something, he looks normal. Right. And then on the broadcast, whatever they do to his face on the broadcast, stop. Just stop. Maybe give the guy a hamburger before he eats. Maybe they tell him like, "Hey, you gotta fast for a few days before you go on. You do the broadcast." But like, he doesn't look normal on the broadcast. Other times, I think he looks fine, but not good. I can't look at it anymore.
Look at early career Brady, he looks so different. He's like a lot of baby fat in his face, and it's so. I mean, look, I thought they did okay. They didn't have much to work with in terms of the game, but
that's true.
So yeah, the logo. All right, I just hope one day they go back to doing it the way they did it. If you go look back at all those old logos, they were fantastic.
The Rose Bowl, when they played at the Rose Bowl.
The Rose Bowl, yeah.
Oh my God.
Cowboys and the Bills, yeah. That was great. I mean, I had a lot of paraphernalia with the Ravens' first Super Bowl 35. It kind of had like the pirate theme. It was in Tampa, and unfortunately, by their second Super Bowl, they had already had the standard corporate logo for Super Bowl 47, but we'll always have Super Bowl 35. I love the one in Houston with the little orbit, hit the circle, and the orbit was Super Bowl 38. They had, I think, the one in Jacksonville, Super Bowl 39. They had the bridge. I mean, it really infused personality. It really, and people who remember those games, they would look at those logos and they would instantly have memories of that game. But you look at
the patch, like it popped so much more.
Oh my God. It was great because you'd first see it at Media Day. It used to be Media Day. They used to do it during the day, and they would do it. And it was the first time you'd see them all wearing the uniforms, right, with the logo on it. And then you'd see, oh yeah, that's right. The Colts are wearing white and the Saints are wearing their black jerseys. Like it was it was neat. People like that. I mean, that's one thing that pops about sports is the logos, the colors. I mean, the things that kind of make it stand out and visually appealing. And you've taken one of the greatest elements away for what? I mean, did they even make more money by doing that? I mean, maybe they
Yeah.
must have a trademark with it, but it's just a shame. It's just one of the many
When
things gone.
when they did, I think it was what Steelers Packers was the first
That
time they
was.
did the cord run. I
Mhm.
remember I was like, oh, I kind of like this. This is nice. It's a little cleaner. But I thought they were gonna do something else.
Right.
I kind of thought I was like, oh, well, it's Steelers and Packers. It looks like steel. Like maybe there's something there. I don't know. I was like, it kind of makes sense. And then they did it the next year. And I was like, okay, I don't like this as much. And then they did it again the next year. And I was like, okay, I really don't like this. And it just kept going. And then they unveiled the colors. And I was like, hey, at least there's some color in this thing. But it's still just, it's not the same. There's no human touch. Doesn't feel human to me.
Yeah, yeah. And then the NFL get away with it by saying, "Oh, but now we put some color in it," but it really doesn't change anything. They believe it or not, they actually changed the logo of Super Bowl 36 after 9/11. So there actually was originally a New Orleans themed logo, which was kind of similar to Super Bowl 31 with the Packers and the Patriots, which was also in New Orleans, and they changed it to like an American um, basically like it was
Yes.
like a logo of the United States with the red, white, and blue, and it
Yeah.
because it was very patriotic. And
And the
there's a
Patriots
guy.
were playing in that
Patriots were
one.
playing. There's your conspiracy theory, right? Patriots won the Super Bowl after 9/11. There's a guy on Twitter who creates um, logos or what he thinks the logos would be.
Yeah.
So it's not quite the same, but yeah. And you didn't get to really grow up in an era where
I know.
we would still have football next week. We'd have a Pro Bowl game in Hawaii. They would have their AFC and their NFC jerseys. It was beautiful. You had something to look for. It was like Pro Bowl party. Cool. Let's all hang out. I mean, it's something. It's still football. It's something you could bet on.
It's such an emotional drop off doing the Pro Bowl, not having the Pro Bowl after. Like I feel like I need a dessert.
Transition into the
You
off
know what I
season.
mean? Yeah, I need something that's like a little less like the guys are running half speed. Everyone's in Hawaii wearing the Hawaiian shirts, but you just get nothing. Like we get the XFL or the UFL coming up, which they had their commercial for it. And maybe next week we'll talk a little bit about the commercials. I don't know if you had any favorite commercials. I'm gonna be honest, like most of them, there was nothing that was that exciting to me commercials wise.
No, I have no comments on any of them, but I will tell you if you want more logo excitement, you can look up the old Pro Bowl logos. They were generally pretty similar, but they would mix them up a little bit each year. 2008 season, so 2009, that was the last year that the Pro Bowl was played after the Super Bowl in Hawaii. It used to be the losing coaches of the championship game. So John Harbaugh actually coached that year against Andy Reid. Funny enough, right? Andy
Yeah.
Reid was joking that he should have a timeshare there because he coached in the Pro Bowl 4 times as a result of losing the NFC Championship game in his time in Philly. And it was great. And look, the players did take it a little more seriously then. It was still pretty chilled out, but they would introduce the Super Bowl winning players last, and they kind of got a little respect from the rest of the league, and it was kind of a chance for the broadcast to recap the season, talk about the upcoming season, and it really was a nice, kind of
Wrap up.
sunset, if you
Yeah.
will, into the off season, and it was something. It was like, hey, we still got the Pro Bowl next week, you know. Yeah, it does make me sad to think about it. There's just so many things that are different now, and we've traded them for games in Frankfurt and Australia that don't do anything for us other than make us get up really early, perhaps, to watch the game.
And makes it harder on the players.
Mhm.
Like, yeah. All right. Well, that's it. There's no more football left on the horizon. That's it. I woke up Monday morning and just the heaviest non-alcoholic related hangover
Yeah,
of like waking up and you're I remember I felt like I opened my eyes and they just wanted to stay shut. Like you just open, you're like, what the fuck? And then you open again, you're like, oh, it's so bright. It is so just depressing. But no football left. But we got baseball around the corner. Pitchers and catchers reported this week for a lot of different teams. Next week, we are going to cover the NFL offseason, and then we are going to take a 2-week break. It's been a long NFL season. Got a lot of different stuff going on. It's been pretty crazy. Added some new faces, officially new faces. And we want to gear up properly, get our minds right, get our bodies right to gear up properly for baseball, hockey, and NHL season, and maybe a few other extra cool little announcements we have for the brand. I am finally getting around to working on the documentary for Summer Smash. Anyone who is interested in that, had some artistic blocks, I think is how I like to think about it. But I think I'm back. Yeah, we got a lot of stuff planned for the summer. Not ready to unveil it. Go join the email list. You'll get probably a rundown of that within a couple weeks. Go at chaoticallyintolerant.com. Go to draftamerica.com. Check out all of Michael's stuff. I think I just saw your article, your Super Bowl prediction.
Yeah, well, I gotten 10 right. I was due to get one wrong, so I
read that.
Still working on one that was highlighting the best postseason game from each of like the last 25 years. So this, by the way, this will not be the best postseason. The Super Bowl will not make the list by any means. What was the best postseason game from this past year? It was all a blur, honestly. I guess the Chiefs Bills was probably the best game.
Let me look here. I mean, Rams Eagles could be there.
Eagles was good. I thought the Chiefs Bills was just the most
Bucks Commanders. That was a good one.
Commanders was good. I mean, the Ravens Bills game was entertaining, but certainly not any of the other Eagles games besides the Rams. And the Rams blew out the Vikings, and you had Washington blew out Detroit, and so yeah, I don't know, but
yeah, Bills. The top three, I'll give you your top three right now. Can we do that? Or do we want to save it?
Two Bills games, right? And the Rams Eagles probably.
Commanders Bucks.
Commanders Bucks.
Oh, this would actually be top four, I guess. I still think this would be top three. Commanders Bucks, Bills Ravens, and Chiefs Bills. I think those are your top three. Eagles Rams probably go number 4.
That's fair,
right?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, obviously the Super Bowls the Chiefs have won have all been really good games, but the ones they've lost have not. So
they either win close or they get blown out. That's all they know how to do. All right, well, cool. Yeah, we got one more episode before the break, so we'll be back next week. We're gonna do off-season, maybe a little NFL draft prep. Go check out Spring Hill Sports Cards. They're gonna do 2 more shows. John, Chiefs fan. Their show, I think, is going to be dropping a little early. I'm not sure. I got to talk to them about that. But it might be dropping a little early. John is going to be in shambles. His co-host was heavy on the Eagles, and he's going to dance on his grave a little bit. So go check that out. And again, go check out chaoticallyintolerant.com. All the stuff we do. We're going to be updating some stuff on there as well. And we will see you next week.